Hi, my name is Andrea Paratto, and I am a certified dementia practitioner, and I'm here with Natalie Hanson. She is also a certified dementia practitioner.
Hello.
And we are going to talk about guilt. Sometimes we just need a break. And it's not always easy to take that break because, again, that guilt is there. But if you don't take a break, you are going to eventually wear yourself down. And that's what we call caregiver burnout. And it happens to the best of us, whether we work in the healthcare field, taking care of individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia all day, or whether we are at home caring for our loved ones. We all will experience that caregiver burnout if we don't take care of ourselves and we don't take a step back. There are lots of places and facilities that allow like respite care where you can take a week and allow that person to, stay in a facility where they're going to get activities and they're going to get some social interaction and take that break for yourself. Maybe go on a little mini vacation. I know it's hard. It's hard to step away. It's hard to walk away from them, but sometimes you have to take that break and care for yourself,
And it's so important to remember.
And I think it's important to separate the past from the present. It is very hard to let go of some of those feelings that we have from the past of what they may have been like or who they were, because who they were might not be who they are today. It's going to change them a little bit. It's going to change their personality a little bit. Or a lot, and it's going to change those behaviors a lot. And so being able to separate the past and knowing that they probably don't even remember most of those infractions that happen within your relationship with that person. So if you can separate the past from the present and live in the present with them, live in the moment with them, that's important, right? Because they don't necessarily remember 5 years ago or 10 years ago or even 20 years ago or 5 minutes ago. So living in that moment with them is actually going to help you actually separate the past and the present. And it might actually help take away some of those feelings of guilt. There are some coping mechanisms such as anger. We all feel anger. How often have you felt like you are going to lose it? Well, for me, it happens a lot. But while providing care, I've learned so much that, I understand the disease process. And I think that that is half the battle of dealing with that anger. Sometimes you feel like you are on your last nerve. Your anger and frustration are actually kind of normal. I feel that if I could forgive myself for being impatient or feeling angry or feeling frustrated, if I can maybe find constructive ways to express my feelings or handle my feelings, taking that walk, de-stressing myself, basically. How do I find that stress-free zone? Take a time out. Take that step back. I think that will help a lot. Learning that walk away method and giving myself that little bit of a break. And finding those supportive people around me. There have got to be supportive people. Maybe you can't find them in your family. Maybe you can't find them with your group of friends, but there are people out there who have a lot of information and resources that could actually help you. Whether it's, there are Alzheimer's and dementia groups that actually help people just sit around and talk about all the things that they go through. Because you're not alone. There are other people in this world who are going through the exact same thing you're going through. And so I think that finding a good support group, sometimes being around strangers instead of being around people who, you live with every day is easier.
It's easier to talk about those things that maybe you feel embarrassed to talk to your friends about.
Exactly.
Because these people are going through the same things as you.
They're going through it too. That's the amazing part. Anxiety. Mm-hmm. Ooh, anxiety is a big one, right?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Well, because a lot of times you feel like things are going out of control. You can't control what's going on. You can't control the disease process. You can't control how your loved one's behaving. So that anxiety rises.
And rises.
And rises and rises. And I think it's important to pay attention to it, to recognize it, and come up with some coping mechanisms for when that anxiety does get to you. Anything that will give you a break from what is happening. And again, we talk about taking a break. Taking some me time. A lot of times, you could just stepping outside and smelling the fresh air.
Right. I mean, even as a caregiver
deep breaths.
In a facility, I have to take my breaks. We
They're
all
so
have to decompress at some point in time. So even if it's a 10-minute break where you can actually step back and just kind of decompress a little bit, is very beneficial. I think that it's really important to take a break from everything once in a while. And I think that it will help that anxiousness, because with anxiety can emerge that short fuse, which creates that anger and frustration, and it just kind of goes hand in hand. But I think that anxiety is kind of like a warning system for your body.
Yeah.
To say, hey, it's time to take a step back for a minute. Maybe you need to take a little time out and take a little break. There's lots of different ways to cope with anxiety. Of course, you should always see your physician if you're experiencing a lot of anxiety, but, deep breathing, meditation, exercise. We talk about this a lot when we are working with individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia, that exercise is one of the best stress relievers. So that might actually help, even if you have to run on a treadmill in your home so that you can hear or keep an eye on, at least you're reducing some of that stress through exercise, and doing it without it being you taking your loved one with dementia for a walk and having to continue, that stress. But just giving yourself that break from what's happening in the moment. We have that crankiness, that irritability. It comes with being tired. Tired physically, tired mentally, tired. And when we're tired or stressed, it is hard to control the things we do and the things we say. And often things that we say that we don't mean. And it's in that moment, and we're just cranky and we're irritable. And today I just don't know if I can do this. And so we often will lash out at the smallest, littlest, tiny inconveniences. But we can find ways to deal with our cranky and irritability. Maybe we need a break. It's always about taking a break, because we need rest. We have to rest. We have to sleep. At some point in time, our bodies have to rest. And we know that when we sleep, we are less irritable. When we get a good night's sleep, we will actually work better the next day. We will do better the next day. We'll have more energy the next day. We'll be less cranky and irritable the next day. Often we will turn to alcohol, have a glass of wine here and there to kind of help de-stress ourselves. Sometimes we turn to food, that favorite junk food, that half gallon of ice cream that's been sitting in the freezer. I'm just gonna go chow that down and eat my stress away. But unfortunately, it's normal to feel that way. It's normal to do those things. It's how a lot of us deal with stress. But it's more beneficial if we were to maybe keep a journal of what's happening, and knowing that if we don't have somebody to talk to necessarily, we can write down our feelings. And sometimes writing them down helps, get them out,
get rid of them.
Yes. And it makes us feel better. Or of course, talking with a professional and having them help us with that. And then of course, there's always depression. There's that sadness. And that's hard to get away from when you feel like you're cranky and irritable all the time and you're tired all the time. And of course, the depression contributes to feeling tired all the time. And I think that anybody who cares for a loved one at home is going to run the risk of being depressed, right? I mean, there's that feeling of hopelessness, that loneliness, like you discussed earlier, when you don't feel like there's other people going through what you're going through, I think is what you talked about. And that, you still feel lonely even though you're surrounded with people.
Right.
But you're the only one really going through it. You're the only one 24/7 caring for that individual. Everybody else gets to come and go as they please.
And I think part of the depression also is, is that mourning too, of mourning of who they were and what they're going through and everything too.
That grief. That
grief that can kind of lead into the depression because, things aren't the way you pictured them to be at this stage of your life and their life.
Not even a little bit. I just don't think anybody could be prepared for something like this because, you spend your life, making memories. You spend your life working hard for retirement so that, and then you have this plan for retirement, you know what you're going to do and life is going to be so great. And then your loved one, your spouse ends up with a dementia diagnosis. And so life takes a completely different turn than you had previously expected, like you said. And yeah, it can be very depressing. You're mourning your life that you should have had or would have had or could have had. And that's got to be tough because then you manifest that into guilt for feeling that way. Yeah, I can't even imagine. But the good news is depression is treatable. You can see a physician. There are medications that could be helpful with depression, maybe short-term use. But you have to talk to your physician. You have to talk to a professional and talk to them about feeling depressed. Join that caregiver support group. There's many for Alzheimer's and dementia out there that a lot of people go to. It's actually quite beneficial. I've had quite a few family members of clients I've taken care of that actually went to those support groups and then they became friends. And so then through those support groups, they made more friends. And then they were friends who could sit around and actually discuss exactly what was going on. And they could talk about their relationship experiences and they can talk about the behaviors and the different things that their loved ones are doing and the feelings that they're having associated with what their loved one is going through. So I think that could be very helpful as far as the depression goes. And of course, exercise, move your body, get up, take a shower, start your day, instead of just laying in bed. That can be very helpful. Let's talk a little bit about disgust because we touched base on this earlier. And I want to talk about this because it's very important because I think that having to help someone can be too intimate. It can be an experience for many caregivers that can be very embarrassing. It's awkward because you are caring for somebody who is not your spouse, but maybe a different type of loved one, such as a brother or a sister or a mother or a father or an aunt or an uncle. And so if that loved one is incontinent of stool or urine and you have to change their adult diaper, it maybe, you were never that person that could actually initially do that before. And so it can be very nauseating. It can even feel repulsive. That having to clean private body parts of someone, like a parent, it can be very unnerving. It can be very uncomfortable. I can tell you that from experience. It's a little awkward. And, I had to learn how to accept that. I had to learn how to divide myself, I guess, and tell myself that I'm doing an act of service for somebody that I love. And even though I may find it repulsive, even though it may disgust me, even though I might feel a little revulsion, the person that I'm caring for is not in control of their behaviors. So they're not in control of their bowel and bladder anymore, right? And so I kind of have to do that. And it's not their fault. And I have to remember that they're not doing this to me on purpose because they know I'm disgusted by it and they know it embarrasses me and makes me feel awkward. It's through no fault of their own. And I think that if I recognize that and I constantly reiterate to myself, it's not their fault, it's not their fault, I can do this, that I think it would be a little bit easier. I think that maybe sometimes we feel guilty because we think we should be accepting, but we're not. And that's hard. And so we feel guilty, like, I can't do this. Because for the longest time, I will say that I do have another sibling and I would have her do the care stuff because for her, it didn't seem like it bothered her that much, and she was able to make that division a lot easier from family member to caregiver. Of course, we both work in the healthcare field, so we understand that division, but it was harder for me. It was harder for me to give Grandpa a shower when he needed one. It was harder for me to take him to the bathroom. And it wasn't because I felt revolted because he was incontinent of bowel or bladder, because that was something I was used to. It was that awkwardness. It was that embarrassment, of seeing his private parts and stuff. That's not something that any child ever grows up thinking that this is what my life is going to be like with Grandpa when we get older, So it took me a while longer to acclimate to that and to be able to say, okay, you know what? I am the caregiver and this is something that is needed. It's not something that he's doing to me on purpose. It's not because he wants to embarrass me or he wants to make me feel awkward or disgusted or whatever. It's something that it's needed. It is a need. And we all know that a need is a need.
Right.
Until it is met.
Until it's met.
And so how can I not meet that need? I had to kind of push myself through that. And so that I met his needs. And I just had to make sure I separated myself. It's not always easy, and not everybody can do that. Not everybody works in the healthcare field, and this is just, their usual routine. Sometimes we might want, you might want to hire somebody, like maybe some home health care, to come in and help you with some of those needs if it's hard for you. Or maybe it's time to look for, that help outside of the home. So that you don't have to feel so awkward and embarrassed or disgusted, because you want to have a good relationship with your loved one, and those feelings might impede that. So it might actually be beneficial to reach out and get that help.